Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Joe and I have been going to Stamford Bridge for over 30 years. For the past 3 years, we've been exchanging voice notes on everything from the highs in Porto to the lows of Potter. Each week, this podcast will take you inside our unfiltered thoughts on all things Chelsea, sharing our view from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes.
Oh man, Brighton 3, Chelsea 0, 70% possession, 0 shots on target, probably our worst performance of the season, in fact, I'd say definitely, and it's bad, isn't it? It is really bad. In the last episode, probably the episode named Passion, and probably our most passionate episode, and that's what we called for on the pitch. We wanted to see a response. Joe, you and I all week, not on the pod, we're talking about, the Chelsea teams of old, how under, Terry, Drogba, Lampard, there would have been a players' meeting. You'd have seen a response. I think you even said, actually, I don't even mind if we lose at Brighton in the league, but I want to see fight, I want to see response, I want to see something if we lose a game 3-2. But it was awful, wasn't it? That really poor, decent start. But as soon as we conceded, again, as soon as something goes wrong with this team, we seem to just collapse in on ourselves at the moment, and it is really concerning. There's so much I'm sure we will break down about it, but we talked a lot in the last episode about where the blame lies, the squad balance, the manager, the players, right up to the ownership, and our season is, in real danger of fizzling out now, isn't it? I think I'll start with a question, Joe, and obviously tell us what you thought of the game as well and some of the performances. But the big question is Maresca. What would you do? What do you want to see happen now? People are calling for his head, understandably, with Chelsea fans. We've had a lot of experience of changing managers mid-season and getting success, but that was a very different era of players. We're seeing the Maresca that we were all fearful of, aren't we? The one at Leicester, who was rigid with his tactics, went on this terrible slump about this time of the season, and Leicester fans kind of warned us about. That's the version we're seeing now. And the question is, do you back him or do you make a change? And then if you make a change, who do you bring in? Or do the problems run a lot deeper than that? But tough day yet again to be a Chelsea fan, and it's just not much fun at the moment, is it? And again, I sent you this last night. It's 2 months ago. It's only 2 months that we were smashing Southampton, fans singing, we've got our Chelsea back, beating Spurs, showing brilliant character, come from behind, grinding out a home win against Brentford to stay second. That was 2 months. That's all it was. And it feels like a completely different team now. That reaction to Spurs in particular, where we showed real good fight, we showed composure on the ball, great attacking quality, and then the passion celebrating the goal was like, what's happened? What has happened?
Good morning, Mr. Sheen. Hope you're all well. I'm not doing too well today. After watching that, I feel a bit sick still. I needed the Nurofen and the Calpol last night to get me off to bed because that was fucking atrocious. I ranted and raved a bit last week. I think it didn't really do me any good, to be honest. It was nice to get it out. It was a bit cathartic to get it out, I suppose. But I thought, you know what? Coming on here today and actually just going off on one feels maybe almost pointless, because it would be a lot more effort than Chelsea men's first team put in at the moment. But anyway, in relation to your question about Maresca, I'll come to that in the second part, if that's okay. I will concentrate on the game just initially, because I feel as though it does need speaking about, because if we don't, it just feels a bit, why are we not speaking about it? Because it does need picking up on. It started, I'd say the first 5 to 10 minutes, it wasn't great. So don't hear what I'm not saying, but it was like, at least there was like a little bit of energy. The team was fairly consistent with what we thought we were going to see. Just square pegs in round holes, nothing really much different. I suppose Nkunku was sort of dropping a little bit deeper in the early going. And I thought, okay, let's see how this pans out, will it? and he lasted a few minutes. Once Brighton got a foothold in the game, it sort of disappeared completely. With Chelsea, there didn't seem to be any real plan. It's been mentioned more than once there isn't a plan B, and there is zero plan B. When it starts to go wrong, Maresca is absolutely hell-bent on not changing anything. We just continue with the same way of playing, which is getting us the same result, which is, absolute insanity. And that's the way it goes at the moment. It just doesn't feel like there's any way back. If we go a goal behind, you don't ever think to yourself, oh, Chelsea are good enough to get back into this. They should be with the players they have. But, Brighton as a whole aren't a better team than Chelsea. They just show more fight and more character. And the manager is willing to change things when things aren't going well. He's had his moments, I suppose, this season where he may have been criticised slightly, where if you remember the home game that Chelsea played against Brighton, where he refused to change it and they kept playing this high line and Chelsea kept getting behind them time and time again. Well, it's kind of since then, and he's had one or two moments like that. Since then, he has changed his style slightly, and he has, listened to people, and he's probably listened to his coaches and said, you know what, we do need a plan B and a plan C sometimes. And I think Brighton last night, I didn't think they were like much better than Chelsea as a whole. I just felt as though they were, just more up for a fight, and they just did little things much better than we did, and little things sometimes just come down to running harder. I didn't really think that Chelsea, if all this tippy-tappy football, we had, I forget the actual stat now, but it was around 600 completed passes. It was either just slightly more than that or just slightly under that. I think Brighton had about 190 completed passes. And that's two different styles. That's fine. But Chelsea's 600 passes don't go anywhere. What was notable and very audible for me was the Chelsea fans singing "Sideways Again" in relation to the Cole Palmer Lay song. So the fans completely and utterly, I think, have lost faith. Now, Chelsea fans get a little bit of a bad rap, in my opinion. There's a few that will say that we always want the manager changed, and a new manager will change it all for us, and we'll get in, and suddenly we'll start winning things, and then we get a new manager in, it lasts well for 3 or 4 weeks, and then suddenly we go back to normal. I think what Chelsea fans want to see is effort, and they want to see heart, and they want to see the players try. I can no longer watch Christopher Nkunku play in this football team. I can no longer watch Jadon Sancho at the moment, the way he's playing in this football team. Neto is another one. Enzo Fernandez is another one. There's too many players that we are just seem to be carrying. Again, I said it last week, and I don't want to repeat myself, but Tariq Lamptey has played 2 90-minute games of football for Brighton, and Neto, Sancho, and Noni probably in some cases as well have not gone past him once. It was quite noticeable. He was snappy in the tackle. He was all over those players when they got the ball. Neto, in the end, just sort of fell out of the game. And Sancho, too. There was just no secondary idea for them. They didn't even knock it around him and sprint past him. That's sometimes when a wing is struggling. You think, you know what? I'll just outrun you. We didn't do any of that. It was just a case of, I want to keep dribbling up to you, keep getting the ball taken off my toe. We'll get a throw in, or they'll get a free kick, or whatever. And the move broke down, and we started all over again. With Cole Palmer, he was making some, to be fair to him, he made a couple of really fabulous passes in the first half where he knocked it around the corner first time. 2 beautiful balls, which we did nothing with. He then made in the second half. You could see he'd make some really good runs. And our midfield players, whoever it was, take a pick at that point, never found him once. And you could see him literally, like you see in the school playground, pointing, put it there. And we still couldn't find him. I actually watched him towards the end, Palmer. I thought, I need to see what he's actually doing, because I don't want to come on here and criticise him or praise him if he hasn't done the things I want to see. But you did see, when we were 3-0 down, Verbruggen got it at the back a couple of times, or their central defenders, and they were passing out, and in his head, he was thinking, I don't want to run for this. You could see him thinking, what's the point? But he actually did. He made a 20-30 yard sprint to try and make a press and try and make something happen, to be followed by no one in behind him doing it. Once the second goal went in yesterday against Chelsea, to be fair, once the first goal went in, let's be honest, but once the second goal went in, Chelsea were dead and buried, because unfortunately, this manager is so stubborn in his way of thinking that he's just got, like I say, no secondary way of playing, and there's no, cut cord in case of emergency plan. It's just, we're going to keep rolling the ball, Chalobah, Cole Wilter, Cucurella. He'll push up a little bit. I mean, Cucurella got the ball away a lot last night, actually. But again, he's looking for wingers who basically decided they didn't want the ball anymore because they got the shit kicked out of them by Brighton. So they just decided, well, actually, I don't want it anymore. And Cucurella put a few balls up the line where, like I say, nobody was interested in getting it. And we just kept giving ball possession back to Brighton. So it's all very well having 8 passes across the back 4 for Cucurella or Gusto just to whack the ball upfield to nobody. I mean, your pass count's wonderful, but yet Brighton can get the ball from Verbruggen and it's great ball up the middle for Matoma. And to be fair to him, it's a wonderful touch and a great finish. Questionable goalkeeping, in my opinion. He should certainly have made a better effort at that. I mean, Carragher or Neville, I forget who it was now, made a good point that there was only one place he was going to put that. If he reverses that into the other corner from the run he just made, it would have been like a hero's goal. You know, he could only go to that, well, his right-hand side as he looks at it. And I just feel as though Jorgensen should have at least shuffled his feet over to try and make some kind of a better effort there. He got a hand to it, and I think he could have pushed that wide, or at least certainly saved it. But Brighton were willing to do that. They were willing to go over the top more than once, and it's a more direct style of play. But it doesn't mean it's a bad style of play. I think we've all got a bit caught up with the Pep style of, not saying us, but teams in general, Premier League players, Championship players, Division 2 players, this kind of constant keep the ball. And that's fine. There's no problem with keeping the ball, but you have to go somewhere with it. Maresca seems at the moment massively out of his depth. I thought Brighton seemed to have his number. And, you know, Herzler's a 40-year-old coach who's just sort of basically come off like street football. And I'm not saying he's turned Brighton into world beaters by any means, but they are a team that at least you can see they're following him. If you notice at the end of the game yesterday, Chelsea players were all going down the tunnel. And Reece James called all of them back who, you know, Reece, he's injured. He's not injured, sorry, but he's coming back from injury. They're trying to nurse his injury, so that's why he didn't play again last night. But he came on for a few minutes towards the end of the game and he called them all back. Palmer got the hump about it. I saw Sancho get the hump about it. I saw Nkunku get the hump about it. And there was a little bit of pushing and shoving between the coaches, if you noticed that. If anyone's not sure, go and have a look. Palmer's not happy about it and Nkunku's not happy about it. And it's like the players almost gone, now, is this a thing where they're going, we don't want to go over there because we're embarrassed to cut the fans? Or are they thinking they've just had enough of the manager, they've had enough of what's happening in training day to day, the match day stuff? I don't really know. But it was really noticeable that the players didn't want to go there. And that to me is just not proper Chelsea. You can't take all the plaudits and then when you lose some games or draw some games, then decide to yourself, I've had enough and I'm just going to go and do my own thing, go down the tunnel. And all those people that have paid hundreds of pounds in travel, food, tickets, they can't even be bothered to walk over there and say, we're sorry. I think, you know, they need to fucking have a long hard look at themselves. With all of this stuff, I just find it really distasteful. I'll stick up for football players because I think they do get a bad rap in the media a lot of the time. Or they're overpaid this, overpaid that. They didn't ask, the money's given to them. You know, the way the money is in football nowadays, you know, it's obscene, and we know all that. But what they do need to be careful of is actually staying a bit humble and going to your own supporters. And, you know, do you know what? You're going to get a flea in your ear. You're going to get people saying, fuck off, what's that? You are going to get that. But the only way you get better is by saying to your players now, from now until your next game, is I don't want to feel like that again. Even if we don't win the next game, the fans need to be seen for you to be showing some effort. And for me, there was absolutely zero effort in that team. I could talk about some other players, and I'll very briefly talk about them now, just to mention them, because I think I need mentioning. Gusto has fallen off a cliff. I don't know what's wrong with him. His ability seems to have just completely deserted him. Completely. I mean, I don't know what's happened there, but he cannot play inverted fullback, and at the moment he can't play fullback at all. The other one is Levi Colwill. Oh my God, Levi Colwill. I said it last week. He needs dropping. And I know there'll be those that say, well, you know, I'm mentioning Tony is not as good as or whatever, but you can't keep playing Levi Colwill like this. He looks like a spoilt brat. He looks like a baby. Take the goal away, which was all his fault, by the way, dribbling out from the fence, lost the ball, then sat on the floor for 5 seconds, noticed that Brighton were on the attack. They still had about 4 or 5 passes before the ball actually went into a goal scoring opportunity. If he'd have run back, he'd have stopped the pass going to, I forget the player, but the guy that nips it through to Minter, he could have got there and made the tackle, and he just jogs back like he doesn't care. Very much like pre-season. If you remember pre-season, we had a bit of a rant about Fofana and Cole in pre-season. We gave them the benefit of the doubt then by saying that they are not willing to kill themselves and maybe it's just a fitness thing. Well, that's not a fitness thing. That's a desire thing. That's a heart thing. If you really want to play for Chelsea, that's if a new manager was to come in, I'd be looking at that and saying, you're not for me, mate. You're not for me at all. You need to take out the side and you need dropping. He's been really poor, and I don't like Colwell's attitude. He's a bitch. He is always on at the referee. He's always, give me 2 seconds, just retrieving a ball there. It's my boy's football. He's always in the referee's ear saying that something's wrong, and he's always hard done by, or someone in the Chelsea shirt's hard done by, like always. But he's never right. I wouldn't mind with Cole, but he's never right. He's always in the wrong. And that's what really pisses me off with him. He's just, if he's going to be our captain going down the line, then God help us. I will talk about Maresca and our leadership stuff in a separate voice note. But on this one, I'm so disappointed. The team have regressed hugely. I'm not sure where the next win's coming from, quite frankly. I'm not sure where the next draw's coming from. And at this stage, I'm not sure where the next shot on target is coming from, because we look devoid of any skill, any plan, or any heart, or just camaraderie between the team. It's a real shit show.
Hey, it's Chris here with a really quick message. Check us out on Instagram at 1905 Podcast. You'll find video clips, photos, and much more about everything we discuss on the show. Plus, it's a great way to get in touch to tell us your thoughts, share your feedback, or just say hi. Follow us on Instagram at 1905 Podcast. And now, back to the show.
So then there's Enzo Maresca and the managerial situation. And what do we do about it? Well, for me, I think it's not as straightforward as just sack him. I think there's those that would sack him tomorrow, and I can understand fully why you'd want to do that. And then there's those that say, well, do you know what? Is sacking the manager going to prove any different to... Are the results going to improve, essentially? And I really don't know is the answer to that. And nobody's got a crystal ball. Anybody who sits here and just says, sack the manager, get in whoever. Carlo Ancelotti, I've heard his name mentioned. I've heard he's not available. He's managing Real Madrid. Like, the sort of manager we're going to get in would be somebody like Iraola from Bournemouth. Now, people will say, well, look how well they're playing. Look how well they're doing. I've seen this story many times before. Maresca gets sacked. Iraola comes in from Bournemouth. He had 3 bad results. Fans want him out, and the process starts again. Now, I'm not saying Maresca shouldn't be sacked if the results continue, down this line and the football is turgid. You obviously walk in a very tight line and tightrope. I think what needs to happen, and it never will happen because the board are so stubborn, is if they come out and said, look, whatever happens, we back Maresca. We don't want this to be, it can't all be on one season. So if Chelsea don't perform this year, it can't just all be, we've had a bad year, right, you're gone. If it's a 2-year process, and in the second season there's no signs of growth halfway through, then maybe you're within your rights to do. But I just don't see how sacking the manager right now is going to improve it might improve our results in the short term. Will it improve our results in the long term? I'm not too sure. There's too much chopping and changing at the moment, and we seem to be bouncing from one manager to the next. There's 6 managers in 3 years, 0 trophies. It proves, guys, that just sacking the manager isn't always the way to go. I don't think Maresca's, there's a lot of blame and there's a lot of, he deserves criticism, but I don't think it's always the best way to go. What he needs to do is go back to the drawing board and say, what I'm doing is not actually working, or use parts of what I want to do, parts of my system, parts of my way of playing, but I'm willing to adapt. If you don't adapt, you'll die. And at the moment, Chelsea's results are dying. My biggest, we know a lot of people that literally want Maresca out today. Lots of our friends and family would have him, if he was sacked today, there'd be no one crying for him. I think Maresca at least acknowledged the fact that the performance was terrible, and he felt sorry for the supporters who travelled down. At least there was an admission of that. But I think he needs to get angry. I think he needs to get angry in a press conference. Not to the point where he loses his mind, but he needs to be firm and say what's happening isn't good enough. You can't blame the last 9 results on not having a striker, because we've had plenty of strikers and we just haven't used them very well. So Jackson's been fit until the last week. Same with Mark Gui and Christopher Nkunku. So we've had strikers, we just haven't used them very well. So once again, it's down to Maresca to say, okay, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to, he's a rookie manager himself in many ways. I'm willing to go back to the drawing board and figure this out, because at the moment, he's staring down the path of doom, which, I don't know. If we sack another manager this week, or in the next couple of weeks even, I do feel as though we're just going to be back here in 6 months' time with the same sort of conversations. And quite frankly, it's getting really quite tiresome. The facts are, the club needs to realise that experience plays a very big part in football. You can't do it with children in every single position. I've got no problem playing an inexperienced, exceptional winger that needs help sometimes, but no problem playing like a Lavia or someone that's, again, quite inexperienced really in the Premier League. He's obviously got some games under his belt, but he's not exactly a veteran of the game, is he? Caicedo looks tired. He needs some help. I just think they didn't help themselves in January. They could have bit the bullet, and I know everyone says Santos is doing so well at Strasbourg, what a season he's having. But you know what? He's our player. If he's doing well, he'll get games for Chelsea. And look at last night. He could have come on for Caicedo. He could have played instead of Caicedo. He could have played alongside Caicedo. The facts are they've got a £100 million player at Enzo who is probably causing them a bit of a problem, because if he was 30 million, he probably wouldn't be playing. So yeah, my thoughts on Maresca are he needs to adapt or he's going to be sacked. But equally, I think there needs to be a bit of a, not a soft approach, but there needs to be some thoughts into adjusting your style of play to at least appease the supporters and at least give them something to get excited by, because we've been so deprived of just even just a good game of football for so long now that it's becoming a little bit depressing, and the fans won't keep paying all this money to go down to games home and abroad to watch their team play like shit every single week. So I think I would just like to see Maresca adjust his style of play to at least give us as fans something to hang our hat on and say, well, I can see there's a definitive sort of realisation that maybe he was wrong and there are other ways of playing.
Cracking summary, Joe. I think that is a really good analysis of what happened yesterday in the game and then the current situation with Maresca. It really is. It's funny, isn't it? Because you can't help but have a little look on Twitter and that kind of stuff, and there's a lot of people looking back, understandably, with Tuchel and the great stuff he did and what he was for the club, but even Pochettino being kind of mentioned a lot recently. And I think it's so easy to forget that this has been going on for years. This is not a new situation that Chelsea are finding themselves in. It's been bad for a while. And even Tuchel, who I absolutely loved, clearly I think most Chelsea fans do, you've only got to look at, to be honest, the last part of his period in charge, basically after we won the Club World Cup, and obviously all the Abramovich sanctions and stuff came in, we kind of stumbled our way through the end of that season, managed to get third, but there were plenty of bad days along the way in that season. I look back at some of the results earlier and it wasn't great. And then if you remember the pre-season of the next season when he didn't last long, we were terrible. We were really bad. That was the year that we got smashed 4-0 by Arsenal in pre-season, started the season really badly. Do you remember we got done 3-0 at Leeds and lost in Europe in the first game, and that was at the end of his time. But the signs were there, even under Tuchel, that it was bad. Sorry about the noise in the background, by the way. I'm at the Canary Wharf in London for my daughter's 8th birthday today, so hopefully it's not too noisy. But the point is, it was bad under Tuchel at the end. Then you had the Potter experience, if we want to call it that, and yeah, again, you don't have to work too hard to remember how bad that was by the end. Couldn't score a goal for love or money. Obviously, Frank Lampard came in and actually felt sorry for him. He couldn't do much with the situation then, and the season was awful. And then Pochettino last season, it's really easy actually to just remember those last 5 games, because obviously we finished the season really well and actually all ended the season feeling really good about him and about the club. But we got done 5-0 by Arsenal in what was it, March? About less than a year ago. We got absolutely smashed at Arsenal. We were horrendous. And I remember in that now infamous game that we beat Man United with 2 goals in the 98th and 100th minute, whatever it was. I remember being at that game thinking at 95 minutes, yeah, I think I'm done with Pochettino. We were poor, and there were so many games last season where we looked, inept, out of ideas. Again, frustrated with Pochettino's lack of willingness to change and try something different. So I guess my point is with the manager situation is exactly as you say, Joe. It's so easy, and I think, we've lived the best examples of changing managers, as I said earlier, and it can have an immediate impact, and often it does. But the problems at Chelsea are more deep-rooted, aren't they? The problems are in the squad building, which we talked a little bit about in the last pod. There's a massive lack of experience. There's a massive lack of character. I don't always think you have to have age to have character. I think John Terry came in as a young player and had a lot of character immediately. Obviously, he learned as well from experienced heads around him, but those players that are around, and Colwell, sadly, is a really good example. He's really lacking in the leadership that you'd want from a player like him. And you can go across the board, and we don't need to name them, but there's a lack. There's a clear lack of what you need at this level to win games in the Premier League consistently. Yeah, it's a really difficult situation. I don't think that they will do anything with Maresca this season, personally. I think it's, unless we really, can't buy a win in the next 6 weeks, then, we've got home games coming up against Leicester and Southampton. I think if he, for example, failed to win those games, then I think, the conversation might be different. But I don't see them doing anything drastic right now. I think they'll probably keep the powder dry like they did with Pochettino last year until the summer, and then do a review. And as I said in the last pod, I think all eyes, and actually, to be fair, don't love the guys, Carragher or Neville, but they even said on the Sky Sports commentary last night that the real attention needs to be going on these sporting directors and the squad they've built. And there was a really apt quote actually by Neville, which was, you can't spend £1 billion on a squad and not have bought a top goalkeeper and a reliable centre forward. It's that they should be the first places you spend your money. In fact, go and spend 200 million and cover those two positions and then build the rest from there. And it's actually quite sad where we've ended up, because I don't personally think that when you've got owners of your club, you can ask much more than them to invest in the team. And they really have. They've spent over £1 billion. What do you want in owners? You want them to put their hand in the pocket and find money and show that they want to win. I think they've done that. The question is, the people they have picking those players, the sporting directors, have spent 40 odd million, I guess, if you add the fees of Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo, both good players in their own right, but neither give you a goal threat from midfield. That's a huge problem. Add Lavia into the mix. Lavia, again, a really good player, another 40, 50 million, doesn't add goals. You've got 3 midfielders that you've spent over 250 million on, and they don't give you goals. We must have spent, best part of 150 to 200 million on a big bunch of wingers, and those who are currently in the squad, again, do not score goals. I think we all expect more from Neto. He's not doing it. Sancho is flattering to deceive. Noni's Noni, isn't he? And add Mudryk to the mix. It's a lot of money on players that aren't giving you a goal threat. And you look at what Liverpool have done, who've spent less money on, for example, their forward options, and they almost all of them will guarantee you double figures in goals. You haven't got to look that hard to say the building of the squad has been poor, and in some respects feel a little bit sorry for Maresca in that regard. All that said, he has to help himself. And I think what you said there, Joe, is spot on. He needs to come out, have a bit of honesty, a bit of fight about him. He said a little bit in the press conference yesterday after the game around the fact that, you know, it wasn't a good performance. Felt sorry, like you said, but I still felt it wasn't as strong as I'd like to have seen. I think I want to see that that conference when he goes, yeah, we're Chelsea Football Club, that's not good enough. And there seems to be a little bit too much, yeah, we're not too worried about Champions League this year, that isn't the objective. And, it's good to go out the FA Cup because we can focus on the Conference League. It's like, come on, this is Chelsea, it's not enough. And, yeah, the patience will very quickly wear thin if he doesn't show that he can come up with something. And I think my final point on that will all be exactly that. I think in the lead up to the game against Brighton, as well as looking for some fire and passion, the other biggest thing I was looking for was, let's see what we're going to come up with, because we've got this big issue now with no Nicholas Jackson out for the best part of a couple of months. It's a disaster. And obviously Mark Gui out as well. What are they going to come up with? They had a week to work on it, to come up with a new approach. And it was the same. There was nothing. It was the same as we'd seen in the FA Cup game, and that was really disappointing. Really disappointing. I was hoping to see just something different. I don't even know what. I mean, put Noni down the middle, put Palmer on the right, put Nkunku 10. I don't mind. I just wanted to see something, a different approach. But it's a definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And it feels a little bit like that's what we're seeing at the moment, doesn't it? So, yeah, really disappointing, really flat. And you're just looking at basically the other games around us this weekend, and just sort of praying that we can hang on in there, really. But it doesn't really matter if we don't get our own form back. You've got 3 games coming up, Villa away, and then 2 very winnable home games. If you can come through them with 7 points, we're well and truly still in the mix. Anything less, and the realism of what this season will be like in the league, I think, kind of hits you pretty hard around the face, doesn't it? And you're kind of going, well, it's almost another wasted season. And, yeah, it's a different conversation. But onwards and upwards, we will continue to support Chelsea through the thick and thin, and every little thing is going to be all right, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, mate, it's one of those situations, isn't it? We've said it before, it's adapt or dying. At the moment, he's dying on his arse. He just has to change things. If he's got any, self-respect, you can't keep doing this to yourself. Like, with all honesty, anybody could say, here's the lineup for the next game. I could pick that team for the next game, right? My mum could pick that team for the next game and get a 3-0 loss. Like, anybody could do that. The way these guys earn their money is they have to look at tape, they have to look at film, they have to look at, similar systems to the way that Chelsea play. How did this team line up? So, for example, we've got Aston Villa next. You have to look at them and say, okay, what's their strengths? What's their weaknesses? Now, there'll be managers and there'll be people out there saying, don't play to the opposition's weaknesses, play to your strengths. Well, yes, of course, play to your strengths. But if your strength means that it helps the opposition and they love the way you play, then you've got to delve into the way that they play. You've got to kind of nibble into where they're weak. Have they got a small wing, a small fullback? So let's drop a few crosses on him. Just the goalkeeper not like coming for crosses. Is the goalkeeper dodgy with his feet? I mean, I sound like most of the Chelsea goalkeepers at the moment, but you get my point. There has to be something in those sides. Where are they conceding goals the most? The stats now are through the roof. Modern football, if it's got one thing going for it, there's every stat in the book. Where I think modern football does seriously let itself down is with these system-based managers. Spurs can point to Postecoglou, Chelsea can point to Maresca. I mean, even the Southampton manager, I forgot his name, it won't come to me at the moment. The guy that was losing 5 and 6 every single week, he kept playing the same fucking way. You're losing every week by a cricket score. Like, even if they started to lose 2-1, you'd be like, oh, fair enough. He's changed it. He's trying something different. But no, we're going to keep playing out from the back with ranked bad players, and we're going to lose 6-2, 6-1, 5-0, 5. I mean, no wonder you got the sack. I mean, it's not bloody rocket science, is it? If you haven't got the players to do a certain system and play the way you want, Even if you spent £1 billion fucking quid like we have, then you have to do something different. It's just idiocy. Anybody who supports Chelsea could pick that side against Brighton. I could have picked that team and just gone, he's out, Jackson's out, and Kunku in. Where's the inventiveness? Where's the academy player that's scoring 20 goals this season? Why don't we give him a run? I'm not saying he's going to be the answer, by the way, but give him a run alongside somebody else. Drop Palmer out to the right-hand side. Put Nkunku behind. Stick the academy player up front. And give Brighton something to deal with. If you look at Danny Welbeck, right? Danny Welbeck is not a fantastic player. Well, he's a good Premier League player. He's been around the block. He's had his injuries, bless him. But he's 34 or 35 now. He's given Chelsea the right chase round last night. I mean, because he's got experience. We've said it a billion times. He's got experience. Where Chelsea players have none of it. Absolutely no experience in the Premier League. They've got a bit of last season and a bit of this season. And that's it. Some haven't even got that. And unfortunately, we're going to keep going around this merry-go-round of managers and young players if we're standing Stewart aren't prepared to just bend a little bit. And surely there has to be a conversation in the summer. If Maresca does stay, there has to be a conversation about this. Because I don't know about anybody else, but I can't keep, I was going to say pick up a newspaper then, but we don't read the newspapers anymore. But you read a story, wherever it's come from, whichever news outlet you like, and it says, Chelsea sign French 19-year-old, insert name we've never heard of. Oh, he's going on loan to, you guessed it, Strasbourg. Oh, hang on, you guessed it, he's going on loan to Rennes. Whoever, like these basically no-mark players, and they've only paid 11 million for him. Well, like you said a few weeks back, Chris, let's put a few of these 11 and 15 million pound players all together and buy fucking Isak or someone of his description, because it's just becoming a complete and utter nonsense. This whole, we're going to keep buying 15 youngsters a year and they're all for like anywhere between 10 and 12 million quid. I'm not excited. That doesn't get my juices going. I think the owners, and they're not going to change, by the way, but I just think the owners have got it in their mind that, oh, look, well, what are they worrying about? We've just bought them another £12 million 18-year-old. Why aren't they happy? I think that's the point they're missing, is that this is the Premier League. This isn't some, mini kind of tournament or something we're playing. This is the one thing that and I'm sure there's thousands and millions of Chelsea fans out there that want to win the Premier League. I'm not interested in winning the Conference League. I don't care. Win it or don't win it. Jamie Carragher said it last night on commentary. They're expected to win that. And he even said it's not even an achievement. If Chelsea win that tournament, it's not even an achievement. They shouldn't be in it. They're too good for that tournament, yet they're too shit for the Premier League. It just goes to show you that you can finish, in a really crap position in the Premier League, and you could absolutely walk a tournament like that. Bearing in mind that West Ham won it on their first attempt, and they've never won anything in their fucking lives, but yet they won the Conference League on the first attempt. I mean, it's got to ring alarm bells for people. You've got to start opening your eyes a little bit, guys. We can't keep going on like this. It's just really depressing. But yeah, look. We've got 3 big games coming up. I mean, Chris, you called it. Is it Villa, Leicester, and Southampton? I'm not sure the order there. I think it's Villa, Southampton, Leicester, actually. And if he loses 2 of these, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they keep saying he's not in trouble. They keep saying they want to keep him. This is what I keep hearing. He's not in any trouble. Whether that's true or not, I really don't know. But quite frankly, it's getting to that point where I just think that something's got to give. He's got to adjust himself and try and get a result, or he's going to get sacked. And I don't know where it goes, because the fans are going to start voting with their feet. They're already voting with their voices to some degree. The away supporters absolutely had enough of it, and I don't blame them. And yeah, something has to change really quickly, because he can't keep going on like this, and he's going to get asked more and more tougher questions as the weeks and months go by. And he's already starting to look a bit of a shell of himself. So if things are hard now, if he's still there in 2 months and he hasn't picked up many victories, then it's going to be really hard then. But I just hope we don't go back to square one, because I just can't bear starting again with a new manager, and it's all sort of higgledy-piggledy. But we'll see what happens, and onwards to the next game.
Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.